Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thank you, Gertrude. My name is Michele C. I am a journalist and a author, and I live in New Jersey. I'm originally from New York. I'm very proud of my New York roots. I wrote a book called Jurassic Girl. It's based on Mary Anning's life. I work on, my day job is as a journalist. I've been freelance now for close to 30 years, and I love telling stories about remarkable people. People that help others. They could be in the medical profession, people that help animals. I'm a big animal rights activist. People in the environmental world. So a few of my readers had reached out and they told me about Mary Anning. I had not heard of her. She is someone that everybody should know about, and I truly fell in love with her. She was born in 1799 in Lyme Regis, which is the Jurassic coast. This was all underwater, like close to 200 million years ago. Mary was 12 years old. This was in 1811. She used to fossil hunt, and her dad, when she was around 5, would take her out fossil hunting along the Jurassic coast, which was miles long, and there were rocks, and it was a pretty rough area. And imagine that, when the dinosaurs did roam the earth, this was all underwater. And at age 12, Mary found an ichthyosaurus, which is part lizard, part fish. People had no idea what this was because back then, the term extinction was just so new that something would die out. People just didn't believe that was possible. But Mary, he was a cabinet maker who hated his job, and he wanted to spend all of his time at the beach fossil hunting. And they came from a very poor family. Mary loved being out there. Her dad gave her sharp tools, knives once she found the fossil, to clean them, to chip away the stone that covered the rocks that held the fossils. And he would have given her these sharp tools even at an earlier age, but her mom was like, no, absolutely not. I don't want my daughter handling sharp tools that can harm her. And this was at a time when it wasn't unusual for women to have big families, but nobody survived. We didn't have vaccines. Medications were scarce, and Mary was, I believe there were like 9 or 10 siblings, but it was only her and her older brother Joseph who survived. And they would go to the beach and collect fossils, mainly ammonites, which are very small fossils that can range in size from as small as your belly button to as large as a bicycle tire. she sold them, and that's how her family got to live. They lived on the money that she made from the fossils. Her father occasionally made some furniture, but he preferred to be in the outdoors fossil hunting. She had her dog Trey at her side, and several times she had to beware of fallen rocks. She had to be careful that when the tide came in, that she wouldn't be pulled out to sea. She almost drowned a few times. It was dangerous work, and she was a really good salesperson. She found all of these amazing fossils, and the biggest one she found when she was just 12 years old was the ichthyosaurus. And unfortunately, back then, women did not, or girls did not get credit for their finds. Women were never written about in scientific journals. The head of the London Geological Society, and you have to realize London, Lyme Regis, where Mary was from, was about a 3-hour distance ride from London, and the scientists in the Geological Society, most of them thought Mary was a fraud because they just didn't think that a girl could find something this amazing. She found the head first and then found the body a few years later. This was 17 feet long. And when it was uncovered, she had a lot of help. She had to organize in her town how to dig this out from the cliffs alongside the beach. She eventually sold the ichthyosaur to someone on the island of Lyme Regis, and he got written up in the scientific journals as being the person who found it. So she had some help. She had a good close friend who knew the head of the Geological Society, and she got some other scientists, all males, to come and talk to her to see how knowledgeable she was. She was very bright, and she was self-educated, because back then you had to pay to go to school, and if you were poor, you didn't go to school. She went to Sunday school, and her pastor was also a fossil hunter. So they did believe that science and religion could mix. She enjoyed being at the seaside, rain, shine, it didn't matter. She wanted to be out there. She wanted to discover new things and new old things, I should say. She just was so into this, and the fact that she did talk to the scientists that came down to interview her, could tell how bright she was, and saw that she wasn't lying, that she really did create this wonderful, she found the fossil, this ichthyosaur. And she there's been a little bit written about her. I work as a journalist, so I interview people that I can talk to, and I could find out, it's just so much easier. Researchers, doctors, just people on the street, and I could ask them direct questions. I don't have a time machine, so I couldn't go back in time to interview Mary. I did find out about the Lyme Regis Museum, and there is now a Mary Anning wing. So there were some researchers there. I was emailing, oh God, so many questions to them, and they were very kind enough to answer. I also read a biography about Mary Anning, so I was able to put some pieces together, and it really worked. And I really, really love learning more and more about her. And I think people should know about her, because the fact that this 12-year-old girl made this amazing discovery proved to eventually the head of the scientific Geological Society that yes, she did indeed discover this. And later on, she made other discoveries. And as I said, she helped support her family. And I mean, this was back in a time when paleontology wasn't even a word. That came into existence around 1833, and it was first coined by a zoologist. And it means the study of ancient life. Back then, it was geology. And also, when she did find the ichthyosaur, people were wondering, a lot of people thought it was a crocodile because it kind of resembled that. That was the closest creature that they could see a similarity. And ichthyosaurus is the Greek word for terrible lizard. It has a long, pointy snout. Um, and she also fossils. Fossils were around for a while, and the word fossils, fossilis, means to dig up. So she was just so passionate, and telling her story and learning more and more about her was just fascinating to me. And I thought other people should know about her, especially kids. A lot of kids sometimes are like, well, you're only 12, 13, however old, just wait, you don't have to do that, or you don't know yet. But she knew, and she did something pretty remarkable. And I think that is, she deserves to have that notoriety. I think that she shouldn't be a hidden figure. She should be well known, and more people are coming to terms and learning about her. And that's why I wrote Jurassic Girl. And I called it Jurassic Girl because it was the ichthyosaurs from that period, the Jurassic period. And I've been learning more and more. I've been talking to kids about the relationship between dinosaurs and birds. I live very close to New York, and there's an amazing sculpture that was just put up on the High Line on Manhattan, and it's a giant pigeon. And there is a direct link. So if you don't think that there are dinosaurs around today, the pigeons and other birds are descendants of the dinosaurs. So, but the ichthyosaurus was a lizard, was a reptile. So we have that, and let's see. I'm trying to think what else I can tell you about Mary. The book talks about just daily life there, like what she ate. She was very, very poor. There was lots of dinners were porridge because they didn't have money for meat. And also, which surprised me, they drank beer. Because the water was deadly, so you didn't, and it wasn't high in alcohol. Just finding out all this, like being a detective and looking and learning and asking lots of questions and having access to the Lyme Regis Museum and the researchers to answer those questions really helped a lot. Otherwise, I would not have been able to put this together. And then as a writer, as an author, it's a very different world than being a journalist. And when I'm working as a journalist and I'm writing, I'm on my own. As an author, obviously I am writing on my own, but I paired up with two close friends and they became even closer. We all three were working on books at the same time. We exchanged manuscripts. We were very polite in the very beginning, trying not to insult anybody. But then we decided, no, we really need to fix what we have. Having a team really helped.
Wow, your story is absolutely incredible. And what fascinates me is you put yourself in a position to share a story of a young woman whose story would never be heard unless you had written this book. So, why do you think Mary's discovery is still relevant today, especially for young readers?
We're learning so much about the past, and the past influences the future. I want young girls and boys, because her brother was also very involved. He did get a job. He was a upholsterer, He was an apprentice, and he was 15. But I think it's important for kids to know, yes, you can do things, you can forge ahead and believe. It's very, very important. And she believed in this and she loved it. There was a scene in the book I talk about a few times. She lived in the poor section of town, which was on the low end of the cliffs, and that would flood. Like, it was a 2-story house that they rented, and a few times the water would rise and they'd have to go hide up in the second floor because the first floor was filled with water. But
Yes.
none of this discouraged her. I'm sure she had bad days like everybody else, but she persisted. She triumphed. And when the men at the Geological Society said, no, you're a female, this can't work, you didn't do this, and she triumphed. She proved them wrong. So I think kids need to know that.
It's important. So how did Mary's challenges as a young, poor, self-educated girl influence her legacy?
She didn't let any of that hold her back. She just plowed on. And I think it was because of the love of doing what you do. I am lucky in the sense that I always knew I had 2 careers that I wanted to do. Like, when you're little and you're like, oh, a lot of my friends were going to be doctors or lawyers or nurses, great professions. I had 2 that I either wanted to be a writer or a veterinarian. There's the animal part because I love animals. And my mom, I grew up in the Bronx. There's this incredible, the Bronx Zoological Society. She enrolled me, I was at 12. She enrolled me in zoology classes. I was the only kid there. And I was the type of kid that if I was interested, and I know my kids are like this, if we're interested, we're there. We are going to soak up everything that we can. It takes a lot more, it's harder. I think Mary had that. She had that drive. She loved being out there. She loved finding things and, reaching into the waters. And it was so hard. She also, back then, women wore these long dresses. She had a bonnet. She was, and she even climbed the cliffs in an ankle length dress. I mean, come on.
So crazy.
That's
So she
not
was
easy.
determined to find what she was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love
And when
it.
she found it, it was exciting. I had recently interviewed a paleontologist about her work, and she was fascinating. She said her worst day, this is her worst day. She's out in the field alone. She's somewhere in Montana, and it all of a sudden starts to hail, and it's wet and it's cold. So she puts a tarp over herself and she sees this huge dinosaur bone. And she's like, oh my, how the heck am I going to carry this? I can't carry this. So she marks it and they come back the next day. But this is her worst day. That's pretty good.
That's
I think
awesome.
that's pretty good.
So, what do you think her story teaches us about resilience and perseverance?
That you have to keep on. If you believe in yourself, and you really have to believe in yourself. She got knocked down so many times. Science, women still, I mean, it's gotten much better, but it is hard to make it and to get your papers into scientific journals. It
Yes.
is easier for a male. It just is. But she persisted and she believed in herself, and I think that's what people need. They need to believe in themselves, believe in that cause, and if it brings you joy, do
Do
it.
it. Yes. So, how does
Mhm.
the story shed light on the contributions of women in the STEM fields historically?
People are starting to know who she is. It depends. In the UK, they know her much better than they do here in the US. I've heard from my agent that the book is doing better in the UK because people know her.
Yeah.
And they just came out with a postage stamp in the UK
All
of
right.
Mary Anning. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So again, it's being persistent, trusting in yourself, believing in yourself, and women are getting opportunities and they just have to pursue it. And you can't be defeatist. You can't say, no, I can't, I'm not even going to try. You have
Yeah.
to try. You have to, but you have to also have that love.
Yeah, that's true. The passion has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your writing process and research. How did writing a story set in 1811 differ from your usual journalistic work?
I write a lot about, today, I write a lot about autism. One of my kids is on the spectrum,
Okay.
and I write about Alzheimer's, animals, a lot of A's there. I write about science, and I want to know why something happens. And this is easy in the sense that I was trained as a journalist. I know who to talk to. I have connections with a few universities. They put me in touch with doctors or people in the field, like a paleontologist or whoever it is that you ask about these
Right.
questions. And to see if this is worth it. Should you pursue something? Should you not? Right now, I have a story that I just am starting the research on red light therapy. It's brand new. It's for people with Alzheimer's. It's supposed to, we don't know, it's supposed to help calm people, help a little bit with sleep and memory, but it is so new. And the scientific study groups are very tiny, like less than 15 people. And there have been some positive effects, but it's a small group. So I'm going to talk to doctors about, I want them to say, no, this is a waste of time if that is what they believe, or no, this is great if that's,
Truth.
but it was very hard, as I said, with Mary, 1811, it's like, as I said, no time machine. So I looked online and there's a Wikipedia page about her. And I contacted a few museums and I found out about the Lyme Regis Museum, which was because that's where she spent her whole life there. And she didn't really have the money to travel. And she didn't, well, back then people did not live to 80, 90, 100 years old. But she had breast cancer in her late 40s and she passed.
Okay, she
But
died. What kind of research went into Jurassic Girl, and what sources did you rely on the most?
I found a book called The Fossil Hunter by Shelley Emling. It's a biography. She had gone to Lyme Regis, so I read the book, and that helped a lot. When I was writing the book, I wanted to make it appeal to kids. And I love biographies. I read them a lot, but I didn't want it to be dry. Emling's book is not anything but dry, but I wanted there to be a story. I wanted there to be a relationship between her and her family. And on the page in the introduction, I tell everybody that everything in the book except the dialogue is true. I found
Oh,
out who helped her, about her background, about her family life. I did a lot of research. Like her brother worked at 15, he got a job as an upholstery apprentice. And he was very lucky that he worked in Lyme Regis as opposed to London, because if you read any of Dickens and you hear about the factories and that the kids that were as young as 10 or even 8 working 16 hours a day, I am not exaggerating. And if they mess up, they can get whipped. And it's pretty awful. Joseph, her brother, was quite lucky. He had supposedly a very nice boss, and he worked hard. And eventually, he became he was a upholsterer for furniture. But finding out all this information and piecing it together, and learning about Mary and about she seemed to be the type of young lady who, she was at the beach. She got sand under her fingernails. She had sand in her boots. The hems of her dress, I'm sure, were wet because they were long, and the water came up, and she'd go into the water. It didn't seem comfortable to be out there and in all kinds of weather to do this. Something, the excitement. It's like when I talked to that paleontologist who said it started to hail, so I covered myself with the tarp and I found this big dinosaur bone. I mean, how exciting is that? So,
That is so crazy. So, how
mhm.
do you balance the historic accuracy with creating a compelling narrative for young
Well,
readers?
as I said, I did tell the readers on the front page, that as soon as you open it, the intro
Yeah.
says, I made up all the dialogue because I could not interview her. I couldn't
Yes.
interview anybody from that period.
Mm,
They're all gone. But I imagined what it would be like out there. But I took the the facts from the researchers at the Lyme Regis Museum. I looked at the Fossil Hunter book and found out some information about Mary. I found out about her dog. I found out about her father and his cabinet making, and her mother, who she seemed like a very caring woman, but she worried a lot because she lost so many children. And
mm.
it was just, she was overprotective. She thought Mary was a bit uh, too adventurous for her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas Joseph, yeah, her brother was more laid back and more careful. He wouldn't, like her, if her mom found out that she climbed the cliffs at high in this dress with the boots, he would not have liked that at all. She had to,
No.
yeah, she had to tell her after the fact. So,
So, are there other historic figures or stories that you're passionate about that you might write about in the future?
I have one other one that I'd like to write about. As I said, again, I love animals, and I can't stress that enough. I used to blog about cats and dogs and birds and other animals, and some readers told me about Sergeant Stubby. I had no idea who that was. Sergeant Stubby was a pit bull that was found on an army base in Connecticut in the States. And this man by the name of Robert Conroy, he was a private in the army, and it was like the beginning of his service there because during World War I, army bases were set up all around the country,
Yeah.
and the stray dogs would hang out by the mess tent, and he would come out and feed them. And he found Stubby, who he just was, he really bonded with this dog.
Mm,
And when he was shipped to go to France, he smuggled Stubby with him. So
right.
here he is, now he's in France and they're going to find out. So, but Stubby actually saved the troop from a German spy and he saved them from a gas attack because dog's sense of smell is much stronger than ours. He saved
Right.
them on numerous occasions. He was honored by 3 US presidents. His body is taxidermied. It's at the American History Museum in DC in Washington. So I went there. And what was very nice about that was if you go to the museum, you can make, or you go ahead and make an appointment. I found his Robert Conroy's journal. He had a
Right.
scrapbook. So I spent a week there, and there were about 5 other journalists there doing research on other people. There was one guy I was jealous of. He was doing a book on Duke Ellington,
Right.
and he got to the headphones, he got to hear original recordings, and I was like, oh my
Wow.
goodness, to just be around that. Can you
Yeah.
imagine?
That's crazy.
Yes, it is. It
Wow.
really is. I mean, and they gave us gloves because these are old pages, and we were very respectful of the that we got to handle this stuff and we got
Mm,
to read. And there was lots of newspaper articles. A lot of them were repetitious. They were repeated articles, like, and some of them had mistakes in them because I think
yeah.
I found 2 that said Stubby was a female dog, definitely not a female dog. But, just finding out the information and building a story around that. So, and I had to learn about the war because I don't have a military background. Wasn't
Mhm.
before this, I wasn't that keen on learning about World War I. But for some reason, here in the States, the wars that you see in movies and in books tend to be World War II and
Right.
Vietnam. there's not a lot of movies on in comparison on like the Korean
Yeah.
War or World War One. So there's a few, but that's one that I'm looking into.
So I'm going to end our interview with two last questions that are a bit of a thought experiment.
Okay.
In the one, I'm going to teleport you back to the younger you, this young woman who had a desire to be a storyteller, went into journalism, and eventually did what she really loved to do. If you could go back and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
The first one is it's not always easy. There are challenges, but if you really, really want to do this, you should. You should just keep on trying. There will also be naysayers, and it takes work. I was a much better researcher than a writer. I felt very comfortable researching, and I was very lucky. Like in college, I had an internship at the Time Life buildings in the research department, so I learned a lot from researchers. And as again, I love to ask questions, and I had to perfect my writing, and I had to develop a thick skin. And I know great writers who have had editors that are like, "Are you kidding me? This is not good." And we just perfect. And when also when you sit down to write, number three, please, and teachers have told me to tell students this all the time. Your first draft is just that. It's your first draft. You have to go back and fix things and make sure everything is correct. And as a journalist, I don't want to tell a story that's not true. You know, it's different when you do fiction, but this is nonfiction, and there's no room for fabrication.
Last question. I'm going to teleport you into the future this time. And we are going to go and have a conversation with the 90-year-old you. And you're sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your family, your dogs, your cats, whoever's with you at the
Yes,
end.
cats, lots of cats.
So if I could take you into the future to go and have a conversation with this wise woman who's led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her? And the reason why I like this question, Michele, is because a lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already in us. We look outside of ourselves for answers, for solutions to problems, and we forget to go inside. What will you say to your wise woman when you finally meet her?
I think I would thank her for staying the course. Sometimes things weren't easy, and do you stop and write a book because there's possibly no money in that? How am I going to pay? Yes, I have a husband, but I like to contribute. It's a gamble, but you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe that there is a story here. And I really did and do believe in Mary. And when I tell friends about Mary, they see that I I adore her. She was pretty amazing. So I am glad that I stayed the course. I am glad that I pursued, just like Mary. I went ahead, and also having a team. As I said, I had 2 writer friends. We met once a week. We exchanged manuscripts. That was so invaluable. I mean, it was just pretty amazing that we helped each other. And I don't think I could have done any of this without them.
You do need to have that support system around you when you're trying to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, Michele, thank you so much for being a part of writing women's stories into history. That is exactly what this podcast is about. Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We are a social impact movement with a vision and a passion to write women's stories into history. So thank you for being a part of our movement. It's such a pleasure to have met you.
Same. Thank you so much, Gertrude. I really, really appreciate this.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.